kid's got ridiculous power.
The rookie strikes again.
Welcome to the show.
And welcome back to another episode of the Astros Future Podcast here on the Believe Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Price, also known as Astros Future. You can find my work at astrosfuture.com and find me on X at Astros Future.
I'm your co-host, Kenny Van Dorn.
So today we're looking at trying to do a draft like we did last year, doing a draft of prospects to watch in 2026 spring training. Kenny has a little thing here. We haven't discussed it. We haven't talked about it. I have no idea who's selecting. We don't even know who's going first. So he's got a little things that throw on the screen, which will determine who's going to go first. And then we'll kind of get right into it.
Yeah. So here's the issue. We're trying to figure this out. Okay, there we go. So this is our little spinner. We're going to spin the wheel. Jimmy, I think I won last year. I think we did this last year. I'll let it spin. This is for the YouTubers. You can hear it if you're just on our podcast. Oh my gosh.
Close. I don't think I could have imagined something any closer than that. That's pretty crazy. You did win last year, so I'll get to go first. So we'll go ahead and go with our draft time here. Here we go. All right, with the first pick in the 2026 spring training prospects to watch, I'm going with a guy that he's still considered a prospect. He does have major league time, which I think is probably going to be our theme here a little bit. But the first one I'm really looking forward to seeing is AJ Blueball, and a guy we talked about a bunch. Had a kind of a breakout 2024 season, goes into 25 AAA, and really has some struggles, which we didn't expect, and kind of up and down. Eventually got an opportunity, and I believe it was when he went 5 innings against Miami, struck out 8 in a relief appearance, and ended up pitching really well the rest of the season. 1.69 ERA, I think 37 strikeouts in like 32 innings, and really showed that he has the stuff to be a big time contributor, hitting 98 miles per hour, keeping guys off, and like. He wasn't giving up hits. Walks were down. Strikeouts were up. So really good performance from him. But I think where the Astros are at right now, if you kind of look at the rotation, and we may talk about that a little bit later, some of the offseason moves, but if you kind of look at probably the top 3 or 4 might be set, but number 5, number 6, and I think they've said they want to do a 6-man rotation. Those are completely open. And then past that, I still think there's openings in the bullpen. So I'm super excited to see what Blue Ball is going to do this spring.
That versatility, athleticism. I mean, you can keep going down the list. He checks a lot of those boxes. Mentality. You hear about a lot of people in Sugar Land just raving about him as a person too. From Garrett Green, who's the broadcaster, who's spoken highly about him just off the field and what he kind of does there. And I think even we've had guys on the show before that have pointed out, if we ask someone, what do you want to take away from someone else? Sometimes they go to Blue Ball and just say, maybe want that fastball or, something that he brings. Because what he did last year was just consistency. It was just eating innings. And you look back at the last season and you go down the list of like top or the most innings per pitcher. And I think at one point in the season, you were one of the people that pointed out this the most. Ryan Gusto was like hovering around 3rd on that list. And he wasn't even on the Astros anymore. He was at the Miami Marlins. So that plays into the fact of, injuries will happen. Your rotation will not be the same 5 to 6 guys the whole season. I think you're going to have, good consistency out of Blue Ball in that department. But I think he also just brings, maybe like an elevated Brandon Bielak at the same time. He's someone who just continuously 8 innings, really never really carved out a role as much into the rotation, but maybe Blue Ball does that. Or he can go in the bullpen and dial it up to 97 to 100. So it's really like there's just a lot of versatility with what he brings to a pitching staff.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we've seen the Astros really need those guys year after year. Chris Davinsky, Brad Peacock, just there's a bunch of guys that have done that where they've started a few games, pitched in the bullpen a bunch, and just been a valuable contributor. So, Kenny, you'll go next. We'll do snakes, so you'll get the next 2 picks. I'll hit the draft chime. Here we go.
I'm going to stick on the pitching side. I'm going to take Miguel Uola here. Got added to the 40-man roster this past offseason. I believe only player protected from the Rule 5 draft for the Astros by being added to the Major League 40-man roster. We just still don't know, what that role is going to look like. Even going into the late parts of last season, it's like, okay, I think it's finally time to maybe start trying a little bit more out of the bullpen. then he'll go out there and strike out 10 guys over 5 innings without giving up a hit. But he also might have had 3 or 4 walks. And that's the part where it's still the command and the control are the two biggest question marks. We know he has all the tools to be, possibly a pretty dominant reliever in that sense, but it's also one of those arms where you're going to stretch him as long as you can. Miguel Eola has had a lot of upside in his minor league career. He's climbed pretty fast. There's been other guys that have had similar trajectories as well. Misael Tamarez was one that was just massive 2 or 3 years ago, had a lot of those tools, and they tried to move him to the bullpen. Really didn't work out. He ended up getting released. But I think Miguel Eola is going to be a guy that throughout spring training, yes, you're not going to expect him to crack the opening day roster, but what is he going to show you that he can continue to be a starter? Or will they try to give him a little bit more of maybe extended bullpen looks?
Yeah, and you brought up a good point, and I was looking at some numbers I remember last year, and at one point I think in 60 innings he had like 50 walks or something, just an insane number. And I'm looking at his game log here. A game in July, he went 5 1/3 hitless, struck out 11, but he walked 5. But then, like you said, he kind of had those struggles. And then a little bit later in the season, he has back-to-back games where he goes 6 innings, allows 1 run and 1 0, and the other only walks 1. So the tools are there. And I kind of feel like he's in the blue ball mold where it's you mentioned he's got some time in the pen. Maybe they need him in the pen. I think there's plenty of openings there, but then also in the rotation. So yeah, I mean, getting added to the 40-man, I think it's pretty much a guarantee at this point. Unless he gets hurt, he's probably going to get his debut at some point in 26. It's just a matter of is it going to be right away or out of spring, or is he going to go back to AAA and refine some things? But yeah, he's going to be an interesting one to watch for sure.
The amount of guys you have coming in that have had serious injuries in the past, and Christian Javier, I'm sure we won't see Ronel Blanco for a while. Same with Hayden Wesneski. There's going to be a good amount of guys in AAA this year. We can go down the list of guys that aren't even in big league camp, which maybe we can talk about this right after our draft, where I'm a little bit confused by the kind of breakdown this year. But the Ethan Peckos, the Bryce Mayers, I think there's going to be opportunities for spot starts too at certain parts of the season. And those guys that are in the 40-man roster, we're talking about Miguel Eola, AJ Bluebaugh. There's going to be guys like Arrighetti 3 years ago now. Wow, I think that 3. Yeah, I think it's 3 now. Then come up and you pitch kind of in those early April, May games when opportunities arise.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, you talk about Arrighetti. Yeah, it's 2024, so this will be his 3rd year in the bigs, and it unfortunately got a lost year. I know we're going sidetracked here, but yeah, I think the pitching is going to be huge this spring, and kind of goes into something we may talk about a little bit later, but just how interesting the rotation is going to play out. So Kenny, as we're doing the snake draft, you'll get one more pick, and then I'll go. So here's your draft time. Let's go.
With the 3rd overall pick, 2nd pick for Team Kenny Van Doren, I'm going to take Elinbar Santa. Elinbar's been, I wouldn't say this unicorn, but I remember in 2021, I think we can go that far back, just hearing about him on the backfields. Another low bonus international pitcher that's, kind of turning heads. Don't really know too much about him. Baseball America was really high on him early then. The starter side is gone. Last season, he didn't start a single game. He appeared in 46 contests, 31 of those in Corpus Christi, and was lights out as a reliever. And it's hard to rank relievers in top 30 prospects lists, especially ones that have taken a little bit more to move up through the system. But Santa's only 22 right now. He'll be 23 in May. I still think some of those pitches, of course, the fastball is going to be the one that you're most excited about. It's still at the 65 grade, but everything else is, above average, 50 curveball, 55 slider, change up and control, and just overall a little bit lower, just right above average. But I think that's still, a guy that you're, hoping that he can break into that bullpen in some capacity this next year. Because when you go down the list, and I think it's been pointed out a couple of times, you're running out of guys who have options. You're running out of guys that will be under team control. And one of the big things that the Astros have found success on, we look at the Brian Abreu's of the world, is that some of these guys that were starters, they've stuck around in your bullpen, and they've been, prominent names. They've been guys that haven't really missed too much time either. So I think Elinbar Santa, who's had some fluke injuries in his past, early on in his minor league career, only appeared in 12 games between 2021 and 2022. This could be an opportunity for him to break through, and I'm kind of looking forward to seeing more of Santa in that reliever role in AAA, because those 15 games weren't the kindest to him last year.
Yeah, and maybe it was late. That was the most appearances he's ever had in a season, and really kind of creeping up on his innings limit in terms of where he was at one point in time. But like you mentioned, in AA, he was dominant. One thing I like to look at, especially for relievers, is we see a lot of guys with some walk issues, or maybe guys that rack up like ridiculous strikeouts. But can you keep guys from getting base hits? And he held, 57 innings. He allowed 35 hits in Double A, and that's extremely impressive. He goes to Triple A in 13 innings. He allows 11. Going back to Ulola, the same thing. He's very good at not giving up hits, and I feel like that's a trait that can translate. Your walks, you hope you can improve. The strikeouts are there, but if guys don't square you up and they don't hit the ball hard, that's something that translates, especially when you go to the 9 guys or 8 guys, 7 guys, I guess, take the catcher out. 7 guys behind you are even better defensively at the major league level. Then you could end up being dominant. So that's a good one to see if he's going to get an opportunity, because I think there is chances for prospects at this point to maybe make an impact and be big time contributors early in the bullpen.
I know ERA is losing a lot of value to people too, Jimmy. And one thing that Jim Stevenson, who's one of the Astros scouts, one of the longest tenured ones, if not the longest for the Mid-South, he said, looking more at these kids' whips at this point, 1.02 in 57 innings in Double A as a reliever. I mean, that's pretty good. That's a make or break league, no matter if you are a pitcher or hitter, because you're facing guys who have either been in the major leagues or might even jump Triple A. There's a lot of value in the Texas League and evaluating it, especially from a pitcher's aspect. Even though you are playing in a pitcher's park more in Corpus Christi, I still think those numbers were just so eye-catching that they had to get him in big league camp this year with a group of guys that have a lot more experience than he does.
Yeah, and I think if you look at what he did in Double A in 24, and in 21 innings, he allowed 27 hits. He had more walks and strikeouts, and his ERA was above 9. And then he starts there in 2025 and does well. So I wouldn't look too much into the 13 innings in Triple A. I don't know if he makes the team out of spring, but like you said, he's going to be one to watch for sure. All right, my pick. Hit the chime a little early. With the 4th pick here, we'll go to the position players now, and I hope this isn't like an easy one to choose. And my first one already had some major league experience. This one I'll go major league experience as well. But Bryce Matthews is who I'm kind of looking forward to in spring, and I think people need to keep an eye on it. The Astros traded Mauricio Dubon this offseason, so my thought is there's not many guys that the Astros have right now that can play both infield and outfield, and we don't know what level Matthews is going to be if he plays center field or if he plays second base full time, and we just haven't got to see him enough. But given the potential that he has, both with the bat and then the speed and the athleticism, having a guy like Matthews that can play third, he can play second, he can play short, he can play center field, and really if you can play center field, he could probably play left or right as well, with center being the most difficult. He feels like a guy that has a chance this spring to maybe, if he has a really good spring, maybe he carves out a role as a super utility guy. And I think, the Astros have had one of those on their roster for the last, at least the last decade, that have been big time contributors. When you look at Marwin Gonzalez, Dubon, and who's Ledmus Diaz before that. So they have a lot of guys. They've relied on the utility guys. Matthews, I think, is kind of the perfect fit for where he's at right now, because he's not going to take over second base full time. I guess he could maybe carve a role in center field, but I don't know if he would knock out Jake Myers or even Zach Cole at this point. But if he can carve a role as a utility guy, bring that power, speed, steal bases, hit some homers. I know he was exposed a little bit last year when he made a major league debut, but it was only 42 at bats, I believe, hit 4 homers. So I'm really excited to see what he can do, see what kind of progress he's made in the offseason, and then see if he can really get a full-time role as a utility guy.
And you're still wanting that full-time role just in another capacity once, the surplus on infielders loosens up, or if they do trade Jake Myers at some point, because I was floated this offseason, does he kind of find a role where he is a starter again? This is a first-round pick we're talking about, a guy who's been in and out of the top 100 prospects list, no matter who you're looking at with Baseball America or MLB Pipeline. That you talk about those speed and power, still some of his better tools at 55 power, 60 speed. The hit one has gone down a little bit, and you saw that in his major league stint in 13 games. He had a 6.74 OPS, and he had a couple, good amount of home runs, 7 hits, 4 of them all left the yard. But the thing that's just been that thorn is those K numbers, and that goes back to his time at Nebraska too. So something to clean up if he does find that role as a utility guy is really take advantage of those at bats. You're not going to get a super amount to really give yourself a strong sample size where those numbers will be super impactful. But as the season progresses, how will he be able to approach those ones will be intriguing. And we don't really even know how this roster will look. There's always, talks about, movement on that right side of the infield, who's going to be the starters across the diamond to start the year. And we just don't know yet.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what makes this spring so interesting is like the Astros, we've been hearing about it. They got a bunch of infielders, and they're kind of figuring out how to play them. And then you look at the outfield, and you have Cam Smith returning in right, and then center field is, well, maybe it's Jake Myers, maybe it's Zach Cole, and left field is maybe Jordan a little bit, maybe DH. There's a lot of uncertainty in the outfield, and then really on the bench after that infield. So a lot of opportunities. But I'll kind of carry this to my next one. Let me go and hit my draft chime, and I'll give you the fifth overall pick. All right, with the fifth pick in the 2026 spring training prospects to watch, I'll go with a guy that hasn't debuted yet, which will be a different theme for what I've been drafting. But Joseph Sullivan, and he caught a lot of eyes really after the draft. The Astros got him in the 7th round, and it felt like right after the draft there was a lot of buzz about him. And then he goes into spring training last year and has a really good spring. I think he hit a couple of homers, a few really big games. Goes to high A and just does really well in high A in his first full season, 15 homers, 34 stolen bases, drew a ton of walks, eventually gets promoted to Double A, where the struggles were there a little bit, hit 191 in 31 games, only hit 2 homers. And I think we talked about it with him when we got him on the podcast, but hitting left-handed in Corpus Christi is not easy. Not to say it can't be done. We've seen other guys do it, Jordan Alvarez, among some Kyle Tucker, some other guys, but hitting left-handed is tough because the wind blows in from the seas there. And that was a heck of a jump. I mean, South Alabama in 2024 to Double A Corpus Christi in 2025. Heck of a jump for him. But you talk about a power speed combination, and he kind of reps that as well, just like Matthews. Ridiculous speed, ridiculous power, great walk rates. And there's a lot of stats that I think you could look at, advanced stats, and I'd have to go back to some of the articles I wrote this offseason that kind of point to him being probably better than the numbers even show. And I think the Astros are high on him. I don't see him making the team out of spring, but I think he's another one that with another big spring, maybe he goes back to Double A. And then if he continues to hit the ball like he did in high A last year, we may see him really fly up the rankings and potentially push Triple A at some point.
Not a lot of true prospects among these position players, which I think is possibly a good sign where they believe, Joseph Sullivan can be. Was working on his swing a little bit at the end of the season in Corpus Christi. That's why the numbers dropped as well. Very passive hitter. We've talked about it with him. I think that was one of my favorite interviews because you really got a sense of who he is. He's a very passive guy. Took a lot of pitches. The numbers in his first year of pro ball are, it's funny. It's just like he was hit more times and he had like doubles, or the numbers were just a lot of fun just in that year, first cup of coffee in Fayetteville back in 2024. And, among the position players, it's really just him and Lucas Spence, excluding the catchers that are true prospects now. You got Edwin Diaz, Kevin Biggio jumped in recently, Riley Unroe, Jax Biggers, Kellen Strom, and Taylor Trammell, and a little bit on the older side with some of those other guys. And I think this is a good sign for where Joseph Sullivan is. He had a good spring training last year. I thought he was a lot of fun to watch. He's very athletic. I think he's possibly even more athletic than Bryce Matthews, just with how easy the game kind of comes to him in the outfield. And I think he's very fast out there as well. So I'm kind of looking forward to that defense. I don't know how much, maybe the offense will be able to translate right away, but they sent him to AFL. They're trying to get things back up to speed with him, but maybe if he gets a little bit more aggressive in that approach too, maybe we'll see that this spring.
Yeah. So I just went and found the article I wrote, and it was the New Year's resolution. And I think maybe we talked about it on the podcast, but for mine, it was for Joseph Sullivan is to be more aggressive. So I pulled up the numbers. He had a swinging strike rate or swinging strike percentage of 9.4%, which is a really good number. It's actually even lower than Connor Griffin, the number 1 prospect in baseball. The difference was Sullivan swung at 35% of his pitches compared to Griffin being about 47%. So it's really the aggression. And we don't have, the complete, robot down there. We don't know if he was taking the right pitches and umps were giving him bad calls or what. I do think there's that line that he's going to have to find between being a little bit more aggressive, swinging at more strikes, but then also still being a patient hitter and drawing his walks. But yeah, he cleans up a little bit of those things and we could see him really take off.
I'm ready for my next one, Jim.
All right, here we go.
Final pick in the draft. This is, there's a long list of guys at this position, but I'm going to take Will Busch at catcher. I think this is a very intriguing one. The Astros really like Will Busch. I think he's always been more mature for his age. He's always been an older prospect than you might think. And even looking at the ages of the other guys that are, at his position, he is 4 years younger than John Garcia, who's been around in the system. I believe John Garcia was he Mr. Irrelevant, or was he just a 20th rounder?
I thought he was, because I thought they had back-to-back, or had two Mr. Irrelevance, and it was Ferreras, and I thought it was Garcia as well.
Yeah, and Carlos Perez, who's going to be in that room, who's a lot older, but he has MLB experience. Colin Price, who made it pretty far in Major League Camp last year. But the reason I point this out is that there's only two catchers on the 40-man roster right now, and I'm not expecting Will Busch to break camp. I don't think that's really feasible or realistic. But I am intrigued to see maybe some reviews that come out from the pitchers. He's very well liked, it seems, from the people we've spoken to, or just seeing how he interacts with other people in the Astros system. Even on social media, you'll see it as well. He went out to the Arizona Fall League as a late addition. I think he just loves baseball. He's a big Astros fan already. And that was one of the more fun interviews we had last season too, was talking baseball with him. Offensive numbers dipped when he got up to Double-A last year, but he's also on the younger side. He was only 21 now. He played at the JUCO level. I think that kind of comes with more of that maturity. He's a below fringe runner. That's not something you really are expecting from him. But I think he's sneaky athletic too. And that came with him playing a little bit more first base. And he's been good at the stretches and scoops over at that position and kind of adding more to that versatility. But he got up to Corpus Christi. His OPS dipped below 724 games. And for a lefty hitter, you are going to expect him to hit really well in Asheville. And that OPS was above 800. I mean, he was slugging 441 for the Taurus. But I think there's a lot of intrigue with Will Busch right now, especially as a receiver. And, he'll be 22 by the start of the season. Actually, probably halfway through Grapefruit League, he'll be 22. I like Will Busch. I'm a fan. I want to see where that goes. And I know a lot of people would rather me pick Walker Yannick, as the former first rounder out of Sam Houston. But I'm going to roll with Will Busch as one of my intriguing ones for this spring.
Yeah, and you bring up some interesting stuff with Busch. I remember we had him on the podcast, and I had that picture of him stretching at first, where it was like a full-on stretch. Pretty impressive. But what are you hearing kind of about defensively? Because that's really what it comes down to catchers. It's like, if you can hit, they're going to find a spot for you. But if you can catch, if you can be a good defensive catcher, we see, just how many defense-only catchers are like still hanging around the league. But what are you hearing about Busch's defensively behind the plate?
Just receiving wise and blocking, it's very natural. That's where the two keys are. And the run grade isn't very high, and it's not going to really pertain to there. But I think he is a good athlete for his size. He's 6'4", 235 pounds. Like I mentioned, only 21. He's been around in the Astros system for a while. I even think going back to the 2023 draft, going in the 16th round, you don't really see that too often just from the Astros. And I think he's in the neck of the woods of one of those Jim Stevenson picks. So there was a lot of intrigue there. But I think they want to see how he handles big league pitching as well. And I think there's a lot of plus to him being in big league camp to do that. But I think that they know he's ready for the opportunity. And even going down to his MLB pipeline just scouting report, Jim Callis wrote, he does have solid arm strength, though it hasn't translated into throwing out base stealers, and his pitching staff loves his personality. So, I mean, that just kind of ties in what I said earlier about he's just really, really well liked, and those guys stick around in the system. And I think he could be, a Cesar Salazar with a little bit more power from that left side. I think there's a lot to point out in the Astros system that base stealing has been, I think, across minor league baseball in general has been on the uptick over the last couple of years. And the Astros haven't always been the best at throwing out runners. But I think from a receiving end, I think he'll grade out well if we can start seeing some more data in the coming years.
Yeah, and if Callis is talking about his arm being strong, I know we've seen it, and I think we've talked to guys about it as well. But pitchers, especially in the lower minors, they're not good at holding runners on. And guys will get ridiculous leads. They're focused on pitching and everything, and so sometimes it's kind of hard to look at that. I know Yannick had a pretty good caught stealing rate, but so moving on from the draft. So we got your team, you got Ulola, Santa, and Busch, and then I went Blue Ball, Matthews, and Sullivan. So 3 of 3, there we go. But Kenny, it's since the last time we talked, it was December, and I think there's been some moves. Just a couple things I wanted to kind of ask and see where you were at with it. But taking out the prospect side of it, what kind of topic are you looking forward to in spring training? Like what Astros related topic? It could be prospects, it could be the big league club. What do you think is like the thing that you're looking forward to most seeing develop over the next few weeks in spring?
Will this infield, that the guys that are in West Palm Beach right now, will all of them be wearing blue and orange by this time next week even? I think that's the biggest question I have. I know it's a very chalk answer. This is the first time we've had a real discussion about the infield. There was one last year moving Jose Altuve to play more in left throughout the season. this is one of the biggest questions we've had. Just looking at the Astros infield in the last, I would say 10 years, going back to when I was even in high school. I know we talked about your age earlier today, Jimmy, and it's coming up on your birthday soon. So I'm sorry to point that out again, that I'm just so young and spry, but I think that's the best one. And it doesn't really offer many opportunities for some of those guys that we've seen at AAA over the last couple of years. I don't think there's anyone breaking through right now to, when you always look at the Astros system, it's like, man, there's a lot of center fielders. There's a lot of, left-handed hitting college bats in here that aren't going to be among those infielders. Xavier Nayans is a ways away. He's going to be one of your top 3 prospects, no matter where you're looking. But I think that's where my biggest question lies right now is, will all these infielders be on this team next year, or next week?
Yeah, definitely. And like, I've had some conversations. I was on a podcast last week, and the topic of Paredes, being traded, and do you trade him for a major league player, or do you trade him for prospects? Do you go through what could be considered a quick, maybe, I don't even call it you're not even rebuilding. You would just be getting rid of some extra guys you have on the major league roster, turn them into prospects to try to rebuild the system a little bit. But I would say the thing that I'm kind of looking forward to the most is to see how the rotation pans out. I think on paper, there's a lot of potential when you look at Brown, Imai, Javier, and you could probably say that if Javier's healthy, he's probably up in that top 3. Arrighetti, what we saw from him towards the end of his 24 season was phenomenal. And now, obviously, last year had a couple decent starts, gets hurt, comes back, has like 4. I think he has 5 starts. 3 of them are good. 2 of them are really bad. Has the elbow inflammation. He's out the rest of the year. So I think that's why I wrote something recently about people maybe sleeping on Arrighetti and what he kind of has to prove to everybody, if there's anything at all. So be sure to check that out. But yeah, I think Arrighetti, and then you look at Mike Burrows and what he did last year in Pittsburgh, good numbers. And then you look at some of the other guys, Lance McCullers, where does he end up? AJ Blueball. I'm really excited to see how the rotation is going to play out. Which 6 guys will the Astros roll out there? And then, I mean, like, I think if you're looking at the upside that a Burrows and an Arrighetti and obviously already Hunter Brown and Javier, like, the Astros rotation could be really good. There's just a lot of unknowns, and I think it's a lot to figure out in spring. So that's the thing that I'm looking forward to the most.
I don't think you mentioned him in there, but Jason Alexander as well. He had a good finish to last season. Colton Gordon could be another guy that's going to eat innings for you this year, if either that's going to be coming up from AAA or being in that bullpen and just going to mop up duty if the starter doesn't go long. I think there's a lot of intrigue with that because we haven't really gone into a major league season monitoring this team and saying like, oh, wow, there's a lot of pitchers on this staff. Right. You've seen it before where it's like, okay, the rotation's set. We know this, the 4 guys are. It's really a battle for that 5th spot. Who's going to be the opening day starter if, Justin Verlander can't go? And that's really just where your mind's at. There's a lot of intrigue with, you don't really know what the ceiling looks like for a lot of these guys. And even with Ime, we don't know how well he's going to pitch in the United States in Major League Baseball. Yes, he dominated in the WBC a couple years ago. He dominated in Japan, but now it's going to see how does that translate. It feels like he has the mentality to succeed right away. But where will he kind of stack up in that rotation? I think it's a lot of excitement. It's also kind of cool, kind of full circle for us. I mean, when we started this podcast, that was probably, or you started this before I came on, but when you asked me to join you, I think that was right around when Hunter Brown got promoted to AAA. That was still the Skeeters at the time. So I think that's pretty fun to see that he's going to be the opening day starter this year.
Yeah. He goes from, a prospect a few years ago on the podcast, or not on the podcast, but as we're opening the podcast, and now he's the opening day starter, top 3 finisher in the Cy Young last year. So yeah, I guess it kind of lets you know, well, you talk about me getting old, and that's part of it is the guys that were drafted years and years and years ago are now the number 1 starters in the, hitting in the middle of the lineup. But I think there's plenty of optimism, at least for me. I'm always optimistic, but I think there's plenty of optimism this spring to see kind of what they're going to do. Like, on paper, if they're healthy and some of these guys perform to the potential that they're capable of doing, I think the Astros are going to have a really competitive team again. And then, we'll get into it obviously as it gets later, but I gotta throw it out there because I'm super pumped. But I'm the July draft. I'm like, I can't wait. The Astros getting that extra 1st round pick for Hunter Brown, finishing top 3, getting the 4th round pick I know they haven't gotten it yet, but for Framber, assuming that nothing else happens, to have that kind of draft capital. They haven't had anything like that since I think 2000, probably 17, or no, maybe 2000. Yeah, it might have been 17 when they drafted Corbin Martin and JJ Matijevic. They had the 2 extra second round picks over the Cardinals scandal. since then, we haven't had any kind of extra draft capital. Actually, every year it feels like we've had less. We lost the first and second round picks of the cheating scandal, and then you go a couple more years where you sign Hader, you sign Walker, you lost out on your second round pick. So I know I just kind of went off on a tangent there, but I'm excited for the season. Really excited to see what we do with the draft this year. And then I think the draft last year was different than where we've been in the past with going Xavier Nance and Jace Mitchell, another high schooler, and then Ethan. I don't want to. Is it Frey or Fry?
I think we said Fry.
Fry, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm right. If someone from his family listens, feel free to let us know. But Ethan Fry, man, he came out of the gate hot in Fayetteville and has really flown up the rankings. I think we saw it on Baseball America. I know we'll see it on Pipeline whenever they do release their top prospects. But man, he's really flying up the rankings with what he did offensively, and so that's looking like a steal of a pick. So just super pumped for the season and to see. I mean, maybe he even gets a chance in some spring training games. Sullivan did last year. Maybe Fry gets a chance as well.
I'm sure we will see him just in one of those jerseys that doesn't have his name on it. And I think it's one of those things too. I was making a joke. I was like, Cam Fisher walked so Ethan Fry could run. I remember being so pumped for Cam Fisher in his second year, and it just really never worked out. He's no longer with the organization. But for a guy with Ethan Fry coming out hot just the same, college bat, very advanced for where he is. Very excited to see him in the Texas League at some point. I'm sure he might start in Nashville, but sooner than later, I think he's going to be in the Texas League, and he could be maybe even the top prospect in this organization by the midseason updates, whenever that is. I wanted to point out just one thing about the draft, and it's kind of heavy right now just on college players, especially position players. And I was thinking, with a lot of those extra picks, early on, Jimmy, I think you'd want to stack some maybe younger talent if you can find more Xavier Nance or just prep players that could be at the top of your organization that you'll just kind of take some time, because we say it every year, there's going to be guys in that top 30, right outside the top 30. They'll be intriguing, and we'll make major league debuts sooner than later. They'll contribute in some capacity, but you're still just looking for those high end, top 100 guys. And you can always say like, oh, my team isn't being ranked in the top 100. And it's like, there's a reason. I mean, there's, it's just the kind of the pedigree of the prospect, and you're still going to get guys that contribute, but you just want those really advanced tools and a lot of the intrigue that comes with it. So looking forward to just, how the Astros approach that as well. I think this is a pretty pivotal year for Dana Brown, and I don't really know how much that draft will really impact, his future contract or anyone else in that front office. But I'm excited. It's one of those times where there's going to be a lot of picks in the first 2 days.
Yeah, and like you said, the going high potential there, having that extra bonus pool money to be able to go over slot on a guy, maybe with the second first round pick or the first round pick, if there's a high schooler that slides because he doesn't get the money that he wants, or he has a strong commitment to a college and being able to go over slot. They couldn't do that the last couple of years, or if they did, it was extremely difficult to do because they wouldn't had a lot of money to spend elsewhere. Now they're going to have that money to go over slot. So yeah, super important year. I know we fast forward. That was on me, but we fast forwarded all the way to July, and here we are in February talking about spring training. But yeah, I'm pumped for spring training. I think it's going to be a good season. Optimistic. I think there's plenty of things to look forward to. So that's all I got, Kenny. Unless you got anything else.
I think I just said the first 2 days of the MLB draft. The MLB draft is only 2 days now. I always forget that it was moved up. So just the 2 days. There's going to be a lot of picks for the Astros.
2 days though, that's for sure.
It is, yeah. Just constant. If you go on and listen to it, like I think around the 11th, maybe even a little bit later, they'll stop doing the broadcast. There's going to be guys they don't know too much about. Once they get there, you can start hearing names. You're buzzing through them. You don't have too much time to listen.
Yep. Yeah, fun couple days for sure, though. So, all right, well, that's going to do it for today's episode. So if you haven't already done so, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And as always, thank you so much for listening. We look forward to having you back for our next episode of the Astros Feature Podcast covering your Astros and the minor league system.